Well, good evening, and thank you for coming to tonight's virtual Ward 1 Municipal Candidate Forum, which has been organized by the Urban and Community Studies Institute at the University of New Brunswick in St. John. And I am Dr. Rachel Bryant. I am a writer, researcher, and educator here in St. John, and I write about the relationship between people with family histories like mine in the past and also with Indigenous people. And I'm a board member at the St. John Library, and I'm also representing my family tonight. We are a family of 6. We live in Fundy Heights in a house that is probably a couple of kids too small for us, but we can never leave because of our neighborhood and our amazing neighbors. We are gathering tonight virtually, but also in Menegwesk in unceded Wolastoqiyik, the territory of the Wolastoqiyik. And the founders of St. John had binding responsibilities to peacefully share this land with Wabanaki people under the terms that were negotiated in the peace and friendship treaties in the 18th century. And these treaties established rules for what was meant to be an ongoing relationship of coexistence between sovereign and autonomous nations. And I'm pleased to see that tonight we have a question submitted from Eastern Circle. Before we get to the questions, the Urban and Community Studies Institute would like to extend thanks to UNB's ITS team for assisting with technical support, UNB's communications and marketing team for helping get the word out in the St. John community, for submitting questions. We thank the Neighborhood Action Group, Eastern Circle St. John, Black Lives Matter New Brunswick, Chroma NB, Kaya Hemmings, and UNB St. John Student Representative Council and Graduate Student Association. And of course, we thank you, the candidates who have joined us here tonight. It's really good to see you all. This event is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube for the benefit of those who can't be here live. All candidates were sent the questions in advance, giving them time to read and understand each question. And in just a few moments, candidates will be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves. I will then ask the questions in order and say each candidate's name in order when it is their turn to answer. And the order of the responding candidates will rotate alphabetically fairly quickly because there's only 3 of you here tonight. All candidates' microphones will be muted until it is their turn to speak. And I would just remind the candidates to please keep your webcams on for the duration of the forum, and don't forget to unmute your microphone when it's your turn to speak. But if you do forget, I will remind you as quickly as I can. Candidates will be given 2 minutes to answer each question, and at the end of your time, your mic will be automatically muted. I will then move on to the next candidate and continue on in this fashion until all of the questions have been asked and everyone has had a chance to weigh in. And when all the questions have been answered, you will each be given 2 minutes to offer some concluding remarks. So let's begin with some opening remarks, starting with Joanna.
Thank you. Thank you to the UNB Urban and Community Studies Institute and the whole team who's helped out with this. And for you, Rachel, Dr. Bryant, I should say, for moderating the forum today. My name is Joanna Killen, and I'm running to represent you as your Ward 1 Westside St. John Council representative. I'm a very passionate St. Johner, a business owner, and creative problem solver. I'm really seeking your vote because I want to take action on 3 specific things: tax fairness, regionalizing for growth, and the establishment of a connected West Side strategy. I care about St. Johners receiving necessary services and having the opportunity to truly experience an inclusive quality of life here. I'm a 7th generation settler on unceded Wolastoqiyik and Mi'kmaq land. I own and will soon be operating Slocum and Ferris in the St. John City Market. I'm very passionate about investing in this city. I've had a business for the last 5 years called Momentum Canada Skills Development, where we helped a lot of entrepreneurs navigate and grow their businesses as they moved outside of New Brunswick with the idea that they would have a good foundation here. I volunteered in the community since I was a teenager, most recently being a director on the St. John Community Loan Fund / Social Enterprise Hub Board, and I'm the current chair of the St. John Community Arts Board, which is one of our city's ABCs. I worked for Enterprise St. John as the director of the Venture Garage Business Incubator Program, as well as the Seed Loan Now Impact Loan Program, where I was fortunate enough to meet some of the city's most entrepreneurial people. I'm looking forward to this forum and continuing to get to know what matters to West St. Johners most. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Richard Lee, you're next.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, it looks, oh, there we go. Sorry, I thought we didn't have your webcam.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Good evening, everyone. I thought I would use this first 2 minutes to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Richard Lee. I was born and raised on West St. John and have spent most of my adult life in Ward 1. I started my career in sales, manufacturing, spending the last 10 years at Bobby's Hospice as facilities and community relations manager. And I'm also a small business owner. I own Shell Ritchie Investments. Some of you may recognize me from the Friday fundraising barbecues at the garden at Bobby's house, an event that we grew from 20 participants to over 400 attendees in the last year of 2019 when COVID shut it down. I'm an active community volunteer with organizations like the St. John Sea Dogs, billeting for the first 15 years. And now I'm involved in the education program as a facilitator of study hall program. I'm also familiar with municipal policy development and implementation, have sat on and chaired the Taxi Advisory Committee. I have a passion for my community, a proven ability to build work relationships, and a willingness to work hard to get things done. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you so much. Steve, you are up.
Alrighty. Hi, everybody. Steve Wooden. I've lived West St. John for the last about 16 years now. Married. Actually, we have 11 kids, so Dr. Brian, I have you beat there. I've worked in information technology for the last, 20 plus years. You can infer a couple of things about all that. For starters, I'm really good with money. I know the value of a dollar. I'm good with budgets. Obviously, with 13 people in my family, you have to do really well with that. And working in information technology, I'm really good with doing my homework, making sure that I'm able to argue points and I actually understand what the issues are before I offer an opinion on them. I also have very little patience for endless meetings that don't actually, come to any conclusions, and I loathe PowerPoint with an absolute passion. I threw my name in the ring purely because I was kind of frustrated with what I saw as the lack of choices and options with the existing pool of candidates. Transit in particular is one thing I'd really like to focus on. I've said it again and again online, and I'm going to continue to say it. You can't grow a city if your transit system sucks. And right now, St. John's transit system is utterly broken and it sucks. We need to do a lot better with fixing that and getting that together so we can, grow the city. We can entice new people here and then keep them. We need to look for quick wins like Dominion Park Beach and the Redhead Trail system. Our parks and recreational facilities and the area that we live in is so beautiful, but we've neglected it for far too long. So I would definitely look forward to being able to work on those items if elected. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move into the questions that were submitted by community organizations. And this question first will go to Richard. And the question is, what is your position on the current housing crisis in St. John? And this question encompasses issues of affordable housing, rent control, condemned buildings, property tax, and gentrification.
Well, this is not just a St. John problem, and it's not just an issue to be dealt with by municipalities. From what I've read, the responsibility for housing falls on the provincial government, and is a problem that is being faced by many other places in our region and across the country. The number of affordable housing units are below what is needed. Rents are rising. How much new development is focused on single unit residences or higher end condo apartment living? What can St. John do? A municipal government? We can certainly work toward creating an environment that supports development, of affordable housing. There are success stories, there are best practices out there that would help us create a plan to tackle the challenge. There is indeed a housing crisis in our city, and one that we need all of us to come together to find the solutions. There is no silver bullet for this one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Steve, what is your position on the current housing crisis in St. John?
Well, thank you. Well, I'm going to have to agree in large part with Richard on this one. Things like affordable housing and rent control, unfortunately, are 100% provincial-led responsibilities. But we do see, like anywhere else or any other city, once the province fails in its responsibility, the city and the municipality is the ones that actually have to pick up the slack and deal with it. I don't think St. John is in a financial position right now where we could do a whole lot in this regard. But once we get kind of the basics fixed, we can do things like Moncton and Fredericton have done, wherein Moncton has looked at like grants for developers for affordable housing, and Fredericton is working in partnership with the John Howard Society to create and explore affordable housing options. I would definitely like to look at those kind of things. But like I said, we need to get our basic needs under control first. We need to fix those. Things like condemned buildings, there's definitely kind of a glut of those in the St. John region, some of our priority neighborhoods in particular. We need to continue the work of current council. We need to get those either demolished or refurbished and under control as quickly as the law would allow us to do. Things with property tax on the residential side, I'm a firm believer that we as homeowners pay enough already, and I'm adamantly against putting any additional costs on the homeowner. The industrial side, unfortunately, that's a topic that keeps coming up, and that is largely provincial controlled as well. We desperately need some reform in that area, but again, municipality doesn't have a whole lot of control over that. I would like to continue the current work of council on that as well, and continue to push those inroads.
Thank you so much. Joanna, what is your position on the current housing crisis in St. John?
So a renowned health policy researcher, Ahmed Ali, has said that the housing crisis is a failure in public policy, not people. So that really resonated with me on this topic. There's a critical need for affordable housing in St. John. Like, we need development policies that take into account our economically diverse community. So I've personally witnessed enormously successful ventures on civic tours I did of both Boulder and Denver, Colorado. They had these specific areas where they were new housing developments, and what they did was you didn't know which apartment was low income because 100% of them were mixed income. And what was a big win for the city was the stigma around income level really eased. So you didn't have like a huge gentrification problems in some of these places because they were making sure they had these policies at a city level that made sure that these developments did not always made sure that mixed income was included. I'd like to see some form of rent control implemented by the government of New Brunswick. Obviously, it is a provincial issue, but I'm very much aligned with the policy proposals provided by the NB Coalition of Tenants' Rights. Housing is essentially a health issue. So without affordable, safe housing, people experience poor health outcomes, and that directly contributes to their quality of life. With condemned buildings, as a former board member of the Community Loan Fund, I was privileged to witness the success of their social impact housing project, where clients of the Teen Resource Center or the Learning Exchange were able to access these affordable renovated units in Waterloo Village. So the hub actually worked with Catalyst, and they renovated those buildings. So it was a great success around a pipeline between like the teens to housing. So these things are already happening in our community. So we need to rely on the experts, much like Dr. Julia Woodhull-Melnick, Seth Asimakis, to help us figure out these solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is on tax reform. So Steve, what is your position on tax reform?
Well, tax reform. You know what? I actually really hate this question. And there's a reason for it. I mean, tax reform in general is, when we're talking about that, we're talking about provincial tax reform, right? We desperately need it. Nobody's going to argue that. I'm pretty sure every single candidate is in favor of it. I don't think, show me a candidate that's not in favor of tax reform, and I'm going to show you a candidate that's going to stay a candidate. I see far too many people campaigning on this as a primary item. New Brunswick, on the whole, desperately needs it, especially on the industrial side. I mean, St. John receives far less than we're giving back to the province. The province takes far too much. And it's one of two items that would, absolutely fix the financial issues of St. John basically as soon as the check clears. The laws are archaic. They need revision. We need to continue the inroads that the current council has made on that topic. And we need to bring as many other municipalities in as we can. We need to tap the unions, and we need to present a united front. Ultimately, it's in everybody's best interest to support this, because from a perspective, our ability to pay goes up. If we can actually secure that. Ultimately, though, the individual private citizens absolutely must hold their open. So definitely, I think we need to continue to pursue that. But nobody that on council now or that is running for council is actually going to be able to make an appreciable change on that topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanna, what is your position on tax reform?
Okay, so I am a fierce advocate for fairness and tax reform. This is a 60-year-old problem, 60-plus-year-old problem that's been studied probably more than any other issue in the history of New Brunswick, honestly. In the early 90s, St. John was given back around $29 million per year by the province in collected taxes. There's been an 81% inflation rate since then. So 29 million back then is about 52 million today. So the 18 million that St. John receives is just a fraction of what the city used to receive from the province. So there's so many things on the most recent green paper. And I think of it like a bit of a checklist. We just have to start checking things off with the province and holding them accountable to some of these things that they've said. Unified front's a great way to put it, Steve, because really this has to be about a group of us. We have 5 sitting provincial ministers who represent us, the people of St. John, living in our midst. So I personally would like to pinpoint key community members and bring us together to work on addressing this issue. I want to give them a space and a voice. We need to know how tax reform challenges affect citizens. This needs to be accomplished with a group of us who really care, because we're way more powerful in numbers and as a collective. So I really think with a unified voice, we can advocate for change together and see these action items from the green paper realized. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Richard, what is your position on tax reform?
Well, I don't need 2 minutes to address this issue. It's necessary. We don't have an option. St. John's is the economic driver of the province of New Brunswick. That needs to be recognized. We are different. We have very different tax base. We have a lot of business and industry that are taxed differently. And where the tax revenue is shared differently, I don't claim to be an expert here. I have lots to learn about the tax system. But I know from what I read, there are lots of issues of inequality. We also we're also a service center for several outlying areas. People come from our neighboring communities to work, to shop, to go to restaurants and events. We want them to come and support our businesses and organizations. We want business to locate here, but we need to recognize those additional demands of our infrastructure, of our services, the province. I believe that these issues are the foundation for an informed discussion around tax reform. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next question will be Joanna's first. If elected, how will you show support for St. John's 2S LGBTQIA+ community?
So I identify as queer, and I did come out in 2020 as a result of a lot of self-reflection. It took me a long time to come to terms with going public about my orientation. So I really feel I'm well supported, well loved. So if it's scary for me, I can only imagine what it's like for others. So we need to do a really good job of creating safe community spaces for the Two-Spirit LGBTQIA+ community. And one way is to create a community advisory board of folks from the community to focus on just that. The City of St. John supports a number of organizations, and itself is a $200 million organization of itself. So there's much to be done when it comes to ensuring that we are being truly inclusive. And a community board would be a fantastic way to be kind of a direct channel between the city and those who can speak to the kinds of changes that will be meaningful and that will make, shift us to becoming a more inclusive city. The City of Fredericton recently introduced an ad hoc gender diversity committee, for instance, and City of Vancouver has a Two-Spirit LGBTQIA advisory committee who are consulted on gender sensitivity, at the council table and are charged with increasing diversity in the appointed committees and the ABCs. The mandate of the Vancouver Two-Spirit LGBTQIA+ committee is to advise council and staff on enhancing access and inclusion for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, Two-Spirit, and queer communities to fully participate in city services and civic life. So these models are tested and proven and are completely what our community deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, if elected, how will you show support for St. John's 2S LGBTQIA+ community?
As I have said in many different forums, I was brought up to respect everyone, and that's how I like to operate, rather than put people into groups based on personal characteristics. That being said, I know there are biases that exist, and many are systemic in societies around the world, and that can have a terrible impact on somebody's life. St. John is no exception. It's the municipality's responsibility to create a safe and inclusive environment for all of its citizens. Awareness and education is what I think are the key to dealing with bias and create disadvantage or discrimination of any individual or group. That is where we start as a partner to address barriers that exist in our community, to be welcoming, inclusive, and respectful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Steve, if elected, how will you show support for St. John's 2S LGBTQIA+ community?
Well, I work in IT, so we really don't have time to focus on things that don't matter when you're trying to fix a problem. And the biggest thing I would do is ask them. I actually tried to reach out to the St. John Pride Committee to see, I asked them the question. I said, it's not about what I'm going to do to support them. It's what do they need from me for support? And I asked them that question. I didn't get a response yet, but the point is I asked. There have been a number of other cities and another of municipalities that have things like advisory committees and studies done. But they're not St. John. Does St. John actually need that? And I think the start would be to have a conversation, to ask them the question in terms of what do you need to be successful and supported and to feel included and inclusive? Like, how do we bring you as a part of the city as a whole? And if the answer is create an advisory committee to look at what we do things now and how do we do them better, then that's what we would do. But it has to start with a conversation, and you have to ask the right questions. So like I said, I would start there. Let's ask the question and see what they say.
Okay, thank you so much. On the next question, the first candidate to speak will be Richard. Cycling, walking, and public transit are primary modes of transportation for many members of the St. John community, and this is especially true among those who reside in the priority neighborhoods and among school students of all ages. And yet inadequate public transit and dangerous cycling and walking conditions put many of these folks at risk. How would you address street safety through the lens of active transportation?
Thank you. I read portions of the MOVE SJ report dated March 2021 to see what the experts had to say. I was happy to see the report recognize the geographic challenges of St. John for walkers and cyclists, like geographic spread, our hills, our narrow streets. It talked about necessary assets like sidewalks and the importance of planned connections to schools and parks. I was also happy to see the transit recognized as the essential to move residents who are unable to choose not to drive. Again, because our geographic stabilization of core funding is identified as one of our 4 key directions for transit, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. There's no quick fix. The phased plan is in a report and has been built out of up to 30 years and a high price tag. But how do you eat an elephant? Not that I want to eat an elephant, but one bite at a time. The document is still in a draft format, and I think that the ideas, policies, and recommendations in the report need to be considered and discussed with the staff, the stakeholders, and groups, that priorities can be agreed on and planning and budgeting can start. The ability for people to move within our city is a necessity, not an afterthought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Steve, how would you address street safety through the lens of active transportation?
Well, this is actually an item I'm really passionate about. I mean, when I first moved here to St. John, I didn't have a car. I had to get to work uptown. I live west side. I took transit, or if transit wasn't running, I walked. And over the last 16 years, I've watched transit get cut and cut and cut to the point that at this point, it's not usable. We need to fix transit, period, end of. I mean, it's been absolutely gutted. It has to be fixed. It must be fixed if we're to have a chance of growing the city, both from a population perspective and from a business and development one. You can't entice new business. You can't help existing business grow if they've got to worry about, can my workers get to me? I think we need to look at things like moving the smaller side routes to a more on-demand model. I mean, Skip the Dishes does it, DoorDash, Uber, Lyft, CAA does it. You can page out CAA to come and get your car, and you'll get an update on your phone saying your tow truck is 5 minutes out. So there's obviously technology in place to do these kind of things, and we don't appear to be taking advantage of it. Perhaps, I mean, the Liberal federal government just announced billions of dollars of funding for things like green initiatives. Can we tap that to maybe make these smaller routes use electric buses, like smaller ones, rather than these diesel monstrosities that we've been calling the status quo? I mean, we bought 12 new diesel buses in 2018 with federal funding when we knew the carbon tax was going to hit and the cost of ownership and maintenance was going to go through the roof for them. So, you know, there's definitely some things we can do with transit to get better. Things like lighted crosswalks. We should be looking at moving the bulk of our crosswalks to the lighted and audible type. They link into solar, so, you know, there's not a real big power draw on them. In the city, it's really hard to see pedestrians, especially at dusk. You know, we could definitely do better there. Bike lanes, I've seen some candidates pushing bike lanes as a heavy topic. But I mean, out of I think one candidate.
Oh, thank you very much, Steve. And Joanna, how would you address street safety through the lens of active transportation?
Awesome. So, you know, the West Side is a key challenge. We have 2 bridges connecting us to the rest of the city. So it's crucial that West Siders really have easy access points to get them to the services they need and the experiences they deserve. The recent Stantec port on transit is obviously in review, and there's a number of suggestions that could be implemented to ensure easier access to the city's core. So I think, you know, there are a lot of news articles and things about the funding that's coming down the pipe via either a transit federal funding or, you know, the green initiative. So we have to work with other levels of government to access funding to improve our transit system. It has to be a priority. But, you know, with that kind of saying, a connected West Side goes both ways. Like, we have a number of natural gems and things that, and an up and coming Main Street and many recreational options. So, you know, we also want to make sure people can get to us too. I've heard many people say from other parts of town that the West Side is a bridge too far. So I think there needs to be a strategy for attracting locals literally to the West Side and make it easy as possible to access these places and spaces. And, you know, taking a bus tour of the West Side beaches, for instance, different things like that. I'm fully in support of the proposed road diets and restructuring how St. John, you know, how to make our streets safer. Honestly, it's been really impactful to realize just how car-centric St. John has become over these past few decades. There's an idyllic city that we sometimes think about or are told about, where kids played outside in the streets and, your kids could just go roam, whatever. But that was because there was far less vehicles on the streets at the time. That was a lot safer. There was a lot more people paying attention to what was going on. And now we have, I live on Fundy Heights and people drive 50 kilometers an hour through our neighborhood all the time. When I was a kid, we used to have a city-led
so we are moving on to the next question. And Steve, you are first on this question. How will you contribute to the City of St. John's commitment to reconciliation with Indigenous people?
Not going to need 2 minutes for this one. Basically the same way I would with any, impacted community or organization. It all begins with a conversation. Rather than me dictating what I'm going to do, we need to ask them. We need to ask the right questions to get the right information to make the right decisions. And whether we're dealing with, First Nations, whether we're dealing with special interest groups, or no matter who it happens to be, just ask, and then see what they say. Do we need to do something as a city, or do we need to facilitate putting them in contact with the right resources at different levels of government? I know it's a rather novel concept, especially when, looking at our historical dealings from government with First Nations, but let's consult them and let's ask them, what do you need? What do you need from us to be successful and supported and included? They're the ones that know what they need, or they should. So let's ask, and then let's take that information and actually do something with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanna, you are next. How would you contribute to the City of St. John's commitment to reconciliation with Indigenous people?
So as a settler on unceded Wolstock and Mi'kmaq territory, and someone who's stating that I'm here to represent everyone, it's my responsibility to engage with Indigenous communities with regards to what happens here on their unceded territory. I would start and put forth that the City of St. John goes beyond a land acknowledgement and formally engages with Indigenous community leaders to ensure they're officially and continually consulted on any land development in order to start the process of truth and reconciliation in this city. This also relates to the recognition of Indigenous cultural sites that have gone unnamed to this day that sit right inside our city limits. There's a number of action items outlined, particularly by the NB Aboriginal Peoples Council, with regards to what needs to be done. It's already been discussed. There's a huge federal project that went on to tell us exactly the kinds of things that need to happen. So as elected officials, we really need to understand what is our responsibility at a civic level and advocate for reconciliation with the province and the federal government on an ongoing basis. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Richard, how will you contribute to the City of St. John's commitment to reconciliation with Indigenous people?
My answer here is based on the same value of respect that I talked about in question 3. Our goal should be commitment to mutually respectful relationships that build and strengthen our communities. I recognize and respectively acknowledge that all City of St. John interactions take place on traditional lands of the Wolastoqey. Please excuse my pronunciation. Maybe a declaration similar to what is considered by our sister city, St. John's, recognizing and celebrating the contributions of Indigenous peoples might be considered by the upcoming council is a good place to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our 6th and final question before we have our concluding remarks. This goes to Joanna first. What are your thoughts on community policing, where it stands now, where it's been in the past, how it might be relevant in the priority neighborhoods in the future?
So there's been a number of developments within City Hall and better understanding, how a lot of our services are being funded. So in understanding the police budget, I think there's a really incredible opportunity for the community to relay their service requests to the St. John Police Force. I fully support transparency, accountability with regards to how the city budgets its limited resources. And the Police Commission seemed eager to work on developing a community engagement model to ensure that everyone's heard. There's a number of creative ways for communities to reduce crime and move away from criminalizing community members. I'd love to work with community experts who know more about reform, and such as violence interruption or neighborhood change agent programs. The original intention of community policing goes all the way back to 19th century Britain under the direction of Sir Robert Peel. And whether the police are effective is not measured on the number of arrests, but on the lack of crime. Above all else, an effective authority figure knows trust and accountability are paramount. The police are the public and the public are the police, which is his famous quote. So it's not going to necessarily solve all systemic issues in our communities, but I'm not against community policing or violence interruption programs. We just want to see these root causes addressed ultimately, because we want to live in safe communities and ensure citizens are supported and cared for wherever they are. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Richard, what are your thoughts on community policing?
My understanding is that the number of community police officers in our city have gone from 5 to 3. I know the community police office that was closed on Ludlow Street has been closed for quite some time, long enough for the grass to grow up around it last year. I'm not an expert, so all I can comment on is what I've seen or been told by the officers I've talked to. I saw when I owned a house on Charlotte Street West was that the community policing officer was busy. Kids and adults seem to have a great relationship with the officer. In fact, I know a couple of situations where people called the officer's cell phone because they were not comfortable calling the police station or the 911 number. My personal opinion is that these kind of programs are important in our community. In particular, now when the trust of police officers is in question all around us. I know community police officers work with our community organizations to address issues in many of our priority neighborhoods. I believe that kind of partnership leads to positive outcomes now and in the future. Let's ask those community partners and those communities they serve what the future of community policing should look like in St. John. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Steve, what are your thoughts on community policing?
Well, every time we see a budget cut happen as it pertains to the St. John Police, we see community policing positions go on the chopping block more often than not. I think it's a mistake to have that happen. It's one of those items, unfortunately, that looks really bad from a cost perspective on paper. It looks like it costs a lot of money. It's mainly because it's really hard to actually put a value on the longer term benefit of having those programs in place. But I think that they're absolutely invaluable to the community areas that these officers are in. And I think we need to revise, we need to upkeep, and we even need to expand these kind of programs to help eliminate and get ahead of some of the issues, especially in our priority neighborhoods. Before these become issues, then, like Richard said, the community policing officers are your point of contact into the community, and a lot of people are more comfortable with them than even with the police in general. The long-term value of these kind of programs is absolutely key to being able to successfully have urban renewal in these priority neighborhoods. And, it leads to a better city, a better community. And, again, if you have a safe community, you can grow your city better. You can entice people to come in here if you're seen as safe and, engaged and things like that. So, what does it look like in the future? I agree with what both the other candidates have said. We need to engage with the experts, the boots on the ground organizations that are, involved in these areas and involved with these communities. We need to ask them the questions. We need to pull them in, and collectively, we need to figure out how to do things better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that concludes our submitted questions. So now we will move to the closing remarks. You will each have two minutes to offer some concluding thoughts, beginning with Richard.
Thank you to all who helped organize this forum. Democracy is a privilege we enjoy in Canada, and exercising our right to vote is important. COVID has certainly changed the way that we are able to campaign and our ability for you to get to know us. I will leave you with some final thoughts. There are many opportunities for us to regain our position as the largest municipality in New Brunswick. It is important for us to be recognized and acknowledged as the economic driver for the province. Fiscal responsibility and sustainability have been guiding principles in every decision we make. We need to focus on investment that makes St. John a place for people to choose to live and invest and do business. And as part of what we need to showcase the opportunities for investment in Ward 1, like Fairville Boulevard for retail and services, or Dominion Park and Black Beach for recreation and tourism. Municipal government needs to create an environment that supports a safe, inclusive, and diverse community, and an open and welcoming business and investment environment. And something we have not started to discuss yet, we need to start thinking about what a COVID recovery plan for our ward and our city would look like. And I will end by asking you for your vote on May 10th. Let's get it done in Ward 1. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Steve, some concluding remarks.
Thank you. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, we've got to do better with the way we're doing things in the city. I mean, we have so many opportunities. We have so much potential in certain areas. Like Richard has said, you know, Dominion Beach, Black Beach. I mean, our uptown core is absolutely just brimming with opportunities that we could take advantage of. COVID is not going to last forever. You know, we've got lots of things we can take pages out of from Europe, from, you know, Asia, you know, port cities and whatnot. We're a major cruise ship destination. There's a lot that we can do better, you know, but we have to focus on the needs of the city first, the basic services that we're responsible for. We can't even, you know, keep snow cleared properly or sidewalks cleared so that students aren't walking in the middle of the road and or the elderly. So, I mean, I don't think we have any business building net new until we can actually take care of what we have. I mean, there's work ongoing on University Avenue right now where they're putting in another sidewalk on the other side of the road. We're moving transit stops around, and we're putting a bike lane in. What for? You know, we can't take care of what we have now. What's going to happen to those in a couple of years if we don't get a handle on our financial aspect and get better with how we're doing things and look for cost efficiencies? You know, I think we have a lot of tremendous potential. I think we can do things a lot better than we have been doing. And, you know, I'm hopeful that the incoming council, regardless of who they happen to be, can take those things under consideration. On May the 10th, I would encourage you to do the thing that terrifies every politician on the planet. Exercise your right to vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Joanna, would you like to make some concluding remarks?
Yeah, thank you to everyone who obviously helped organize this and the other candidates who joined us tonight. I really feel like it's a great opportunity to just get to share our thoughts and feelings on a lot. And, you know, COVID has really illuminated a lot of the gaps that have existed for a very long time. And I think right now, as we start to rebuild, we have to just be ready and willing to go find that funding to repair some of the damage that's been done. And I understand our city is in a financial bind, but there's going to be a shift, and we are going to have to rebuild. We like to say at the market, you know, we're sad the cruise ship passengers aren't there right now, but this is a chance for St. John to show how we can support each other. So I think that it's similar right now. We all have to be in this together, as our commercials have told us for months and months, and continue to be in this together as we recover from COVID and, you know, build this new St. John in the new world as it will be. So I really appreciate the time this evening, and I hope that, you know, if you want to talk to me more, my number is 333-4248. Give me a call. I would love to chat with you. I am ready and willing to work and to represent you. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, and well done, everyone. That concludes the Ward 1 Forum. Thank you again to everyone who participated tonight, offering your ward and your city this chance to hear from you, to get to know you, to see you in action, the people from the lawn signs, to learn more about you in this strange and in many ways stressful time of social distancing. So thank you for all the work that you do for your community. Thanks to students and faculty from the Urban and Community Studies Institute at UNBSJ for organizing and hosting all of these forums. This live session has been recorded and will be posted online. Please follow UNB St. John's Facebook page for updates on the recording. Thanks again and take care, everybody.